We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Thursday, June 26th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Brooke.
Hello, nice to be here.
Good to have you. And Julian is also with us.
Thank you for having me today.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. It's Thursday, which means that we're going to begin with our keyword news, where we bring you a story that's been gaining traction among people in their 20s and 30s over the past 24 hours. Today's keyword is headphones. Gone are the days when Apple AirPods were the coolest way to listen to music. Now wireless headphones are all the rage among teens and people in their 20s. They've become a fashion statement, especially after K-pop idols started posting pictures of themselves wearing them like accessories. Many also use them while studying thanks to their noise-canceling features. But with prices now upwards of 600,000 won or $400, the trend is also facing growing criticism. Julian, so how do you listen to music? Do you also use headphones?
I do have headphones at home, but I don't like it because it makes it so it's so heavy to wear, and I get kind of sweaty from wearing it, to be honest.
Very real.
But I use AirPods every single day, and without it, I think my traveling would just be a lot more miserable. I use it whether I'm on the train, the bus, the airplane, whenever I can listen to music by myself. I like to use my AirPods. That's my choice.
I really can't imagine going anywhere with my AirPods these days. I'm very dependent on them as well. So how about you, Brooke? Do you think they're worth the hefty price tag?
Well, I'll join you guys. I also cannot live without my AirPods, but for the longest time I was trying not to give in to the wireless trend because I'm clumsy. I thought they would just fall right out of my ears, but that has not happened. I was worried about losing them. I did lose one pair, or so I thought, bought another, found the old pair, so now I have two, a backup just in case, and I think they're really worth the price tag in terms of the AirPods. In terms of the headphones, yes, they are more expensive. And for me personally, when I wear headphones for too long, they actually hurt my ears. When I go to the PC Bang and I try to use their headphones, 10 minutes later, they're just aching. So they're not for me, but I think if you like them, if you think they're fashionable, you like the features, it's worth the investment. I mean, I spent $500 on my cat's electronic litter box. So technology can be expensive sometimes, but if you want it, then I think it's worth the investment.
I agree with how uncomfortable they can get, especially if you wear them for a long time. But then I went to the Apple store recently and I tried on the AirPod Max headphones, and the sound quality just blew me away. So I'm kind of torn. I'm like, maybe it is worth it. I don't know if any of you guys have it, but yeah.
Maybe I'll have to try it. We'll switch teams.
So whether you're team headphones or team AirPods, it really comes down to what fits your lifestyle and comfort. As long as the music keeps playing, that's what really matters. And that concludes our keyword news for this Thursday. And shifting gears from everyday topics like headphones, let's turn to a much more serious issue for our main discussion today. Today is June 26th, a day dedicated to raising awareness about the dangers of drug abuse and promoting efforts to combat illicit drug use around the world. Take a look at the screen to find out more.
The fight against drugs is an ongoing challenge across the world. To raise awareness and encourage action, the UN designated June 26th as the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. On today's episode of NewsGen, we're going to explore not just Korea's drug situation, but also how this issue is impacting the younger generation.
Now that we've seen that introduction to today's topic, let's turn to a leading expert in addiction medicine for deeper insight into the challenges and possible solutions. Joining us today is Dr. Anna Lemke, a professor and medical director of addiction medicine at Stanford University, and she's also the author of the best-selling book Dopamine Nation. Dr. Lemke, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
To start off with the basics, so what are the dangers of drug use and what kind of changes does the body go through when someone becomes addicted?
Well, the danger with intoxicants, that is drugs that have the potential for addiction, is that a person will really like the way that they make them feel, and they'll turn to them again and again. And what we know is that with repeated use, addictive drugs change our brains. And they change our brains in such a way that over time, our drug of choice stops working. We need more and more to get the same effect. And when we're not using, we experience the universal symptoms of withdrawal from any addictive substance, which are anxiety, irritability, insomnia, dysphoria, and craving. So, what starts out as something that's pleasurable, rewarding, or helps us solve life's problems actually becomes a problem in and of itself. And then we have difficulty stopping even when we want to.
Right. Well, I know a lot of people might think, well, if it's just one time, then nothing bad will happen, right? So the important question is it possible to become addicted to drugs after just one use?
You know, I'll never forget when I was doing some research in China, talking to people who had become addicted to heroin. And I was talking to a young woman who was in recovery from her heroin addiction. Heroin is an opioid. And she said to me that she had always been told growing up that just a single exposure would get her addicted. So when she tried heroin and she didn't feel addicted right away, she thought to herself, no problem, I'm not one of those people who's going to get addicted. And the reason I bring that up is because I don't want to send the message out there that you'll get addicted after just one use. Because I've seen a patient for whom that message led them to believe that, oh, since I'm not feeling addicted after one use, I'm okay to use again. I think a much better way to communicate this is to say that if after even one use, you find that the drug is highly pleasurable or solves some problem that you've been struggling with, for example, just by numbing your thoughts and emotions, you're not addicted to it after one use, but you are likely to want to use it again. And with repeated exposure, you can change your brain and become addicted. And depending upon the person and the drug, that can happen quickly. Not after one use, but it can happen over a number of weeks in the cases of individuals who are very vulnerable. Honestly, in most people, it takes months to years to develop a full-blown addiction. So I really want to emphasize that I know that message is out there as a way to kind of scare folks off drugs, but I think it can work in the opposite way. It's also true, though, that even without getting addicted to a drug, you can be harmed by a drug after just one use. For example, if you drink too much alcohol and then you drive, right? You drive while intoxicated, you could get in a car crash, you could hurt yourself, and you could hurt other people. So drugs can be dangerous even when we're not addicted to them.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lemke. Just to shift gears a little bit, do young people make up the majority of drug users?
Most people who become addicted start using in their teenage years. And we see the peak of addiction in young adulthood, so between about ages 16 and 25. And typically the rates of addiction start to go down as we age, either because people die of their drug use, they get treatment, and they get into recovery from drug use, or they experience what we call natural recovery, where some people, even without treatment, are able to stop using. So yes, the answer is that the largest portion of people who are actively using drugs and also addicted to drugs are young people. And that's also because young people are bigger risk takers, right? They're wanting to have an adventure.
Right, so what would be the most practical and effective way to prevent drug abuse and misuse?
You know, drug use and the sort of modern plague of addiction, which the world is dealing with now, is a complex problem. There's never going to be one single solution. We have to really tackle it from many different sides. But if I think about the three main things, number one, we have to decrease access to addictive drugs. We have to make it harder for people to get them, because one of the biggest risk factors for drug use and for addiction is simple access. If a drug is easier to get, more people will use it and more people will get addicted. Number two, we have to make sure that we have easy access to evidence-based treatment for those who have already become addicted. So we can't put our head in the sand and pretend like it's not a problem. There are going to be people in every country of the world who are struggling with addiction, and that's been true since the beginning of human time. We have to make sure that they have access to the best treatments. And then number three, we have to make sure that there are other healthy rewards that people have access to, right? So, because we're all natural reward seekers, we want good things in our lives. And if we have access to healthy rewards like being in nature, connecting with other human beings, then we're much less likely to need to turn to drugs in order to get the kinds of reinforcers that are important to being alive.
So before I let you go, I just want to ask you one more thing. I watched a podcast interview that you did, and you mentioned that dopamine itself isn't inherently good or bad. And that kind of made me wonder, and there's a lot of common misconceptions around it. And so, but since many people use drugs to chase pleasure, like how does dopamine then play a role in this? And so what are some healthy ways that people can stimulate dopamine to experience kind of lasting pleasure without the negative consequences?
Yeah, so dopamine is a chemical we make in our brain. It's a neurotransmitter. It has different functions, but one of its most important functions is that it mediates pleasure, reward, and motivation. The more dopamine that's released in our brain's reward pathway and the faster that it's released, the more likely that substance or behavior is to be reinforcing and hence addictive for us. Now, everybody's brain's a little different, so we have different drugs of choice. But in general, things that are intoxicating for many people are the kinds of drugs that many people will then get addicted to. What happens, though, with repeated use is that our brain adapts to increased levels of dopamine by downregulating dopamine transmission, not just to baseline, but actually below baseline. We go into a dopamine deficit state. And now we've entered into addicted brain, where we need more of the drug in more potent forms, not to get high and feel good, but just to stop feeling bad. So in order to rebalance our dopamine levels back to healthy baseline levels, we have to abstain from our drug of choice long enough so that our brain gets the message, oh, I'm not getting this stimulation from outside. I need to start making more dopamine. But even beyond that, by engaging in activities that are difficult or painful, what happens is our body senses injury and then upregulates feel-good neurotransmitters, including dopamine, and we can get our dopamine indirectly by paying for it up front. And this is things like exercise, something we call the runner's high, where during the exercise, we don't, it's hard, we don't want to do it, we want it to end. But when it's over, we feel really good. And that's because our body, exercise is actually immediately toxic to cells. The body senses injury, upregulates dopamine, and then we get that high. The same thing with ice cold water plunges. In this day and age, simply just taking off our headphones and sitting in the quiet is actually painful because we're so used to constantly being entertained and stimulated. So in order to reset those reward pathways for healthier dopamine levels, I really recommend unplugging for periods of time every day, or maybe even for a whole day at a time, just so we can reset our sense of what is pleasurable and what is rewarding, and learn to take joy again in modest, natural rewards.
I hope this will be a reminder for our viewers to also unplug and get out and go for a run. So thank you so much, Dr. Lemke, for sharing your expertise.
Go for a run without a headphones or without your ear pods. Just your own mind as entertainment.
Right, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and valuable insights with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
We just spoke with an expert to learn more about the dangers of drug abuse and its potential solutions, and we're going to continue taking a closer look at this issue that's affecting millions across the world. Brooke, so how serious of a problem is illegal drug usage worldwide?
Well, it is quite a serious issue. We're going to take a look at some numbers I've brought for today. If you take a look at the screen here, according to the 2024 World Drug Report released by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, around 292 million people used drugs in 2022 compared to 243 million in 2012, marking a 20% increase over the past decade. Now, in the U.S., where I'm from, drug use has been a long-standing and complex societal issue. Although the CDC reports reported a slight decline in drug-related deaths in 2024, overdoses remain the leading cause of death among adults aged 18 to 44. San Francisco is a city that has been in the headlines a lot. It's become one of the most visible examples of this drug crisis. Last year alone, the city reported 635 overdose deaths, many of them in the Tenderloin area, where residents regularly witness people using substances like fentanyl in public spaces, even near homes and schools. And fentanyl has really been a huge problem. Accidental drug overdose deaths began to spike in the mid to late 2010s as fentanyl infiltrated the local drug market. I don't know how much you guys know about this drug, but it is extremely dangerous. It's 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. It can also be lethal even in very small doses. It only takes a 2 milligram dose, which is similar, just to give you some perspective, imagine 5 to 7 grains of salt. That is a 2 milligram dose, and that can cause death for an average size adult. So as a result of that, the city now sees more than 2 overdose deaths per day, which again shows how deeply this issue has taken hold in everyday life, not just in San Francisco, but all over the US and all over the world, which I believe we're going to hear about Korea next.
Right, I remember seeing, I'm sure a lot of people have as well, seeing those shocking news coverage of people just walking around like zombies, like disoriented, unable to really do anything.
Very unsettling.
Right, yeah. But how about Korea? Julian, can you tell us about the drug situation here in Korea?
Yeah, so it's hard to say that Korea is a drug-free nation. Now, just this April, a cargo ship carrying cocaine worth about 1 trillion won, or about 730 million USD, was caught trying to enter the port of Gangneung. Now, this is actually the largest drug case in Korea's history. Now, the discovery ultimately revealed a network of international drug trafficking organizations, and according to a report by the Supreme Prosecutor's Office, there were over 23,000 drug offenders last year, with more than 60% in their 20s and 30s, which is our very own generation. Now, although the number slightly decreased compared to the previous year, the overall trend still continues to rise steadily, unfortunately.
Brooke, shifting gears a bit, what are some common misconceptions about drug use, and how does reality differ from what we often see in media?
Well, I think drugs can be a bit glamorized in media, in movies and dramas, right? It looks like a sort of normalized aspect of partying culture. And we see a lot of wealthy elites or the cool characters, maybe the villain, partaking in these drugs. And when young people watch that, they might have a misconception about what drug addiction actually is, when in reality, it's ordinary people. It's students, workers, your next door neighbors. Those are the people that might become addicted. And the consequences are far darker and more dire than what's depicted in the media. I also want to talk about the internet, because the internet has made the fight against drugs harder than ever for law enforcement. That's because there's been this rise of encrypted digital platforms that makes the transaction of highly addictive substances like fentanyl, ketamine, and propofol a lot easier to do and more discreet as well, because all you need is access to the internet. Buyers can visit the dark web anonymously using special browsers, VPNs, and they can make purchases with virtual currencies, which again makes these transactions extremely difficult to trace for law enforcement. And this is also why the drug crisis has disproportionately affected the youth, because we're the first adopters. We are the ones that are familiar with encrypted chat rooms and digital currencies. And other methods are being used. Even in Korea, I found out something new. There's a common method called throwing. And what happens is drug dealers will throw drug packages in certain locations, and buyers pick them up without ever meeting each other. So again, extremely difficult to trace. And in short, given that our generation is the one that grew up with technology and the internet, it's no wonder that this access is a large factor in why we're seeing this drug crisis intensify in modern times.
So that also shows like Euphoria have also been receiving a lot of
right.
criticism for while it does raise awareness, they also face criticism for kind of glamorizing with this vivid portrayal of drug use. That's also a very serious issue. So Julian, what are some main reasons that young people are even turning to drugs in the first place?
Yeah, well, there's a whole plethora of reasons why young people are using drugs, whether it be because they're influenced by peers, club culture, or just out of sheer curiosity. There is a clear trend of young people using drugs. As a result, these users fall into a more of a vicious cycle where withdrawal symptoms make it really challenging to stop using drugs, and therefore it's just a never-ending loop. But there are even cases of teenagers misusing ADHD medication to improve concentration or for even potential weight loss too. Now, unfortunately, abusing this drug could lead to addiction. And yeah, it's really dangerous because many fall into temptation of drugs because although it is very damaging to our bodies, it does provide some kind of momentary pleasure and relieves them from life current troubles or worries or anxieties. Many reasons, but the main reason for drug addiction is often cited as stress, depression, wanting to escape from daily life, and even just intense pressure.
Right, so drug addiction is definitely a very serious issue that demands our attention as it leads to devastating health consequences. And we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers on what they believed would be the most effective solution to this. So we conducted a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel where we asked our viewers what's the most important way to tackle drug addiction. And here are the answers that we got. The majority of the respondents, 67%, believe that educating teenagers is the most important step in addressing drug abuse. 20% emphasize the need for improving rehab and treatment options, and 13% said they think stronger penalties are the key to tackling the issue. So we just looked at a poll results revealing that the majority of people believe educating teenagers is the most crucial step in tackling drug abuse. So to wrap up our discussion today, we're turning our attention to the actions that are being taken by authorities. Brooke, what is the government doing to combat the drug problem?
Well, Korea is really trying to shift away from a prosecution-based approach to a more rehabilitation-based approach. The Korea Anti-Drug Movement headquarters has now established 17 addiction rehabilitation centers across the nation as of 2024, which is wonderful, but it is unfortunately still not enough. As of 2023, just 6% of convicted drug users were successfully given treatment. And so experts are really emphasizing that what we need to do is we need to look at our treatment infrastructure. We need to look away from criminal punishment and start trying to address the real issues, the things that are causing drug use to begin with. And I also just want to point out briefly that I think one of the most important things we need to do is take away the stigma around drug use. You mentioned the clips earlier. While those are very unsettling and it might be easy to judge, you have to remember that those are real human beings that are having real struggles, so we need to show them empathy.
I think you made a great point about how it's more important to focus on rehab instead of just focus on punishment, because at the end of the day, these are also patients that need care and support. So Julian, what do you think about these efforts?
Yeah, so everything what Brooke said, I have to agree. And to go off of that, I also have to agree that education is the best way to, and the best first step that we can take to addressing this issue. Now, raising awareness and encouraging open conversations around drug misuse are crucial to driving meaningful change. Compared to other developed countries, unfortunately, Korea does not have any dedicated organizations and resources for drug-related crime investigations. Now, according to Professor Lee Pom-jin, director of the Drug Eradication Research Institution and the professor at Aju University, I quote, "Most drug users are not celebrities or wealthy elites, but ordinary neighbors and members of vulnerable social groups. What we need now is a shift in public awareness and greater social understanding," end quote. Now, this is an issue that can affect anyone, regardless of any type of background. And because of these risks, we must continue to have conversations about how our country can respond more effectively to this crisis. Now, drug misuse can cause long-term damage to both the brain and the body. It can also even impact friends, family, children, and your community too. Fortunately, through education and rehabilitation programs, the negative impacts of drugs can be reduced or even reversed. So to protect communities, we must continue to support and expand initiatives that focus on prevention, treatment, education, and also practicing empathy to those going through this too.
Right, and let's also remember the importance of staying vigilant and aware of the dangers that drugs pose both to the individuals and also to their communities. So just like Dr. Lemke said, it's important to just decrease, only through decreasing access, education, and most importantly, compassionate rehab and strong support systems can we reduce addiction and protect the future of our youths. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. But NewsGen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. We covered a rather heavy topic today, so big thanks to Brooke
Thank you for having me.
for coming in, and Julian
Thank you for also having me today.
for coming and joining us today. And to all our viewers, thanks so much for watching, and we hope you have the best day. We are News Generation.